You know, what should now frighten even Labor supporters is that Andrew Giles, in trouble again today, isn't even the most disastrous underperformer in this Albanese government. And the question now is this government even worse than Gough Whitlam's, which was so bad it was sacked? Is it not only dangerously ideological, but simply incompetent? And like I say, Giles isn't even the worst of the ministers, even though he might seem to you Exhibit A after this latest embarrassment is admitted that the 149 foreign criminals he freed from detention last year, including murderers and 37 sex offenders, were actually given invalid visas, which means at least 10 of them are going to escape prosecution for breaching their now invalid visa conditions, like not reporting to police. Clown show. Yet Prime Minister Anthony Albanese today tried both to dismiss this as just a technical issue while trying to hint it was a mistake inherited, maybe from the Abbott Coalition government.
Well, there was a technical issue, and that technical issue has been resolved. All of the visas have been issued in an appropriate way. This is a technical issue that goes back to 2013.
Total fudge. The problem with the wording of this visa actually comes from the former Rudd Labor government, and this government just cut and pasted it. Opposition leader Peter Dutton called this out, of course.
It didn't occur under a coalition government. This happened under a Labor government. Let's be very clear about it. The red herring that they've thrown out there is not factually correct. And Minister Giles and others shouldn't be in their jobs. How the Prime Minister can keep Minister Giles in his job when he's released 149 hardcore criminals into the community on the wrong visas is beyond the average Australian's comprehension.
But, you know, it's not just this that makes Giles seem a klutz. I mean, a well-meaning one, but still a klutz nevertheless. Count just some of his mistakes. Last year, the High Court ruled that Giles had to free a Burmese pedophile from immigration detention, since there was supposedly no real chance this criminal could be sent home. Giles was somehow caught unprepared for that decision, even though one judge warned him months earlier it was probably coming. So he released that pedophile, plus 148 other criminals he thought were in the same position, and released them initially without any plan to monitor or control their movement, or put them away if they proved to be in danger. He changed that later, but too late. Worse, it turned out Giles had skipped 2 meetings in his own office to discuss what to do if the High Court ruled as it did, went instead to events, including one in London, to promote Labor's doomed voice, its planned Aboriginal-only advisory parliament. But there's more. With this minister in charge of immigration, this government has let in a record 500,000 immigrants net in just 1 year, helping to cause a massive housing shortage. It's given visas to 2,000 Palestinians in terrorist-run Gaza and the West Bank during this war with Israel, with cursory checks made in as little as a day. It gave people smugglers a lot of hope just 4 days after it was elected by letting a Biloela family of fake refugees from Sri Lanka stay, and then later rewarding another 19,000 legal boat people here with permanent visas. No wonder it's since let in 2 boats of illegal immigrants just recently land on our coast. And don't forget, it also let 81 councils ban citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day, further weakening our unity. Now that is a hell of a record in less than 2 years. But if you were thinking, this bloke Giles seems a little bit keen on illegal immigrants and not keen enough on strong borders, remember, he's a former immigration lawyer who says he was inspired to get into politics by helping the illegal boat people who actually hijacked the ship, the Tampa, that had rescued them at sea and forced it to take them to Australia.
In 2001, I was a small part of a legal team that acted on behalf of the asylum seekers on the Tampa. This involvement, more than anything else, led me towards seeking election to this place.
So why is he still there? But despite all this, Giles is far from the most damaging of Albanese's ministers. That's the frightening thing. You take Chris Bowen, the Climate Change and Energy Minister. Bowen is on a crusade to pretend to save us from a pretend climate crisis by replacing our coal-fired power stations with wind and solar. Now that means as much as 90% of our baseload power will probably be gone in a decade to be replaced by, well, who knows? Bowen's rollout of wind and solar plants is way behind. His scheme of 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines to hook them all up, also way behind. His snowy 2.0 scheme to store green power was already 10 times the promised price and unfinished. And now his plan to make Australians buy more electric cars, 89% of new car sales by 2030, that's being attacked as impossible by car companies and associations. It's a mess. Now, the Australian energy market operators even warning of more blackouts from next summer. And Bowen's promised, you remember that, to cut electricity bills by $275 a household by next year? Laughable. Yet Bowen too is still the minister. And more bad news, he's still not the government's most inept one. Because that's probably Linda Burney, the Indigenous Australians Minister. She didn't just oversee Labor's catastrophic campaign for the Voice, a racist proposal that was rejected last year by 60% of voters, with Burney totally incapable of explaining why we needed it. What else has she done, I ask you? What has she done, for instance, while crime by Aboriginal youths in towns like Alice Springs explodes? What has she done apart from this week giving us a $4 billion plan to build houses for Aborigines, a plan that works out to an astonishing $1.4 million for each house, and then to be built in remote areas, exactly where there are no good jobs? Need I go on? I mean, this is a government that is keeping us out of recession only by ramping up immigration and getting lucky on windfall prices for resources like the fossil fuels it hates. This is a government that has hammered business with pro-union restrictions that are going to keep productivity increases at lows it admits we haven't seen in 60 years. No wonder Australians last year got 1% poorer on average per person. Yet, no, it's true, all right, I admit this government does do some good things. But look at the big picture. Ask yourself, what is this government good for? I tell you, worse than Whitlam.